All right, so we're going to continue on, and we're going to we're just going to continue on from what I was talking about the fact that people live in a perpetual state of fear and survival. And the way that we can really make some social change is to do what we can to help people come up out of that state of fear and survival. So that should be the goal. If we want a better society, you have to understand that there are interests that are aggressively trying to bring forth the society that they think will work best for them. And in a lot of cases, and as we've seen through time, that a lot these designs and these plans are very diluted. And I know I use the term delusion, and it kind of has this negative connotation, but words and meanings aren't like that. You can use deluded being the act of a delusion, or what a delusion is something that is more spherical than, linear. You understand what I'm saying? So you could use a delusion to help you overcome fears, for example. So these things are just tools, these states of being that I'm mentioning. But when it comes down to it, we have to understand that we need to, if we're going to try and get a vast majority of the population to self-sovereignty, and then to create something like true unity, because true unity is about an individual being in their truth and being in union and in harmony with other people who are also in their truth. You understand what I'm saying? So sounds easy, but it's a very incredibly difficult situation that we have to contend with. And we can tell it is a very difficult situation that we have to contend with because all we have to do is look at history. And history will show us that it's very difficult for human beings to become self-sovereign and then to harmonize with the various self-sovereignties, or the various iterations of self-sovereignties that can exist to form something harmonic like unity. We've seen it through time. There always ends up being a war, and then some murder, and this, that, and the other. So we understand that this is a very difficult task, but it is a task that can be done, especially given nowadays. You understand what I'm saying? But it still has its challenges, and those main challenges basically is what the environment is cultivating in people, and people not taking that step to become self-sovereign. And if you ask me, I think the way is, starting with the basics, starting with the physicality, starting with people actually recognizing that you need to have an actual relationship with yourself, versus having all your relationships be external and be with someone else, or be with some, or being towards some group, some external group. You don't get to do those sorts of things until you've established the appropriate relationships within yourself. You establish a physical relationship within your own body, with your own emotions, with your own mind, with your own intangible or beingness, or soul or spirit, however you want to, whatever nomenclature you want to use. I think the intangible aspect of the human being is probably the most universal term. But until you can cultivate relationships with those aspects of yourself, you have no business being involved in relationships. You have no business being involved in, community organizations. You understand? Because you're not able to, let's say, harmonize yourself so that you can attract harmony. You understand? So until we get to the point where we're having a physical relationship, where we're getting up every day and we're stretching before we go to bed, and we're actually taking the time to understand how that you're doing that, number one, and understanding what that does for you, number two. And then, building upon that by getting up every day and doing some sort of exercise, whether that's just walking Even if you get up and just go up and down your steps 10 times a day, you are invigorating your body. You are taking time to pour into your physical. And then right along with that, taking that time to evaluate your emotions, journaling about things, getting things off your chest and writing about things and thinking things through, especially when it comes to a lot of these wounds. We want to not dwell on them. We want to transmute these things, and extract the value from them and then transmute them, and things of this nature, which, I'll probably do a video about it. And then with the mental, understanding what we're thinking moment to moment and recognizing that. And again, with all these things, you have to make it a habit. You have to make it a habit of checking in with yourself physically. You have to make it a habit of, recognizing how you feel physically. And, the way that you're laying at night, the things that you're eating, the things that you're drinking, the things that you're using on your skin. All these things matter. What you're consuming as far as what you're drinking, what you're eating, all these things matter. You know what I'm saying? Because it tells you what the relationship is with your physical body. And the what we want to work on is coming from a low frequency situation to a higher frequency situation, so that we can get the access that we need and have the energy that we need to sort of break these sort of bonds that the environment of unbalanced patriarchy sort of allows to proliferate, right? And so this is the same thing with the emotional body, checking in with yourself, taking that time to sit with yourself in nature and, revisiting some of these wounds of the past and, extracting the value out of those things and understanding what you should have had, and creating exercises where you are, imagining yourself, with a mother and father who was able to give that to you, to sort of try and heal that wound. And that is something that takes time. It's not something you do on a Saturday afternoon and it's done. This is something that you kind of have to spend some time doing. So spending that time alone, spending that time journaling, spending that time meditating, especially when it comes to your emotions, is so, so, so important. Because the culture supports you ignoring those things. And you have to understand that when it comes to what you've been through emotionally, none of that goes away. It just doesn't disappear, and it just is never to be seen. It's something that you stuff into your emotional field. It gets stored back in your subconscious. It's not going anywhere. That shit don't disappear like it's not magic. It don't magically disappear or go anywhere. You have to work through that, and you have to work that out. And if you don't, then it's going to start seeping out of you. You're going to start having problems with your relationships. You're going to start having problems at work. You know what I'm saying? These sorts of chaotic things are going to start being attracted to you. And then you put yourself in a situation where you can be triggered and provoked. And, there's people out here that are purposely triggering and provoking individuals. This is how bad it's gotten. And perhaps this is always how bad it has been. But, we're just seeing it more. You hear about things like gang stalking and all sorts of things. And, these aren't things that are being perpetrated or being done by, the rich upper class. They're not doing these sorts of things. Again, it's the community members. It's the people in the store. It's the people you go to school with. It's the people that you go to work with that get themselves involved in these things. And, when it comes to unbalanced patriarchy, there are certain tactics that gets employed where as long as the whole friend group is, in participating in these sorts of things, then, the individual is a bit more comfortable with doing these things, even if they know that these things are wrong and they're a violation, and they wouldn't want these things done to them. When they live in a state of fear and survival for so long, having some power Um,